A suicide driver accelerated the train to an incredible speed and destroyed all the brakes. Will the passengers manage to survive? Let's find out. Day and night, hundreds of trains run on the railroad. One of them goes from London to Tunbridge Wells. A man named Lewis and his young son Max are heading home on this train. They have to spend a whole night in the carriage. Lewis wants to sleep badly, but Max asks his daddy to play rock, paper, scissors. The man's cell phone rings, and he goes into the vestibule to answer it. In the meantime, Max accidentally spills coffee on one of the passengers. Lewis notices this and apologizes to the woman. She doesn't get angry and smiles sweetly. A mutual sympathy quickly develops between the characters. We learn that Lewis works as a doctor, and the new passenger's name is Sarah. She looks at Max's drawings with interest. This boy is very talented. Max notices a very suspicious passenger in the carriage. He looks quite aggressive and scares the boy. The angry man argues with other passengers and provokes a fight. He declares that he is traveling without a ticket, and no one will do anything to him for this. A conductor enters the carriage and checks the other passengers' tickets. He thinks Lewis, Sarah, and Max are family, but the boy replies that his mother is dead. The train makes a stop at one of the stations. Some of the passengers get out of the carriage, including Sarah. Lewis notices another suspicious man, but tries not to think about him and asks his son to get at least some sleep. Meanwhile, someone attacks the conductor. Lewis wakes up at another station and sees that Sarah has returned to the carriage. She had only gone to get some water. The woman reveals that they are the last passengers on this train. There is no one else in the carriage. They both head to the terminal station. Sarah admits that she's recently broken up with her boyfriend and asks Lewis to diagnose her, since he's a doctor. The man says that his new girlfriend has heart problems. She laughs in response and gives him her phone number. The main characters decide to get some more sleep. When Lewis opens his eyes, he realizes that they've stopped somewhere again. The protagonist notices a suspicious man in a reflective safety jacket doing something to the brakes. As the train starts moving again, Lewis sees another man crawling along the tracks. Lewis wakes Sarah up and asks her to keep an eye on Max while he goes to look for the conductor. However, he is nowhere to be found. Lewis calls the emergency services. He reports seeing an injured man on the tracks and asks for help. The protagonist sees another suspicious man. His compartment is next to the conductor's one, and he also behaves rather strangely. Lewis returns to Sarah and Max and tells them what he's seen. They decide to look for the conductor together. None of the passengers have seen him for a long time. The train pulls into the station where Sarah is supposed to get off. She kisses Lewis goodbye, and at that moment the characters realize that their train hasn't stopped at the station. Lewis is about to go to the train driver to figure out what's wrong. He asks another passenger, an elderly woman named Elaine, to look after the boy, while he tries to contact the driver on the intercom. The driver responds and asks how many passengers are left on the train. Lewis says there are 6. Hearing this, the driver interrupts the communication. The protagonist tries to get through to the driver. He is approached by the same passenger who occupies the compartment next to the conductor. This man's name is Peter, and he doesn't understand what the problem is. The train accelerates. Lewis panics and pulls the emergency brake. Unfortunately, nothing happens. The brakes are faulty. Peter notices that the train has passed his station. That's when he starts to panic too. The man who provoked the fight on the train shows up next to them. His name is Jan. Lewis notes that Jan is wearing a reflective safety vest. This is very suspicious, but the guy replies that he works as a janitor on the London Underground, and this vest is just a part of his uniform. He didn't get off the train or do anything wrong. The men suspect that the brakes were broken by the train driver. Apparently, he intends to kill himself and the passengers. The characters head to the back of the train. That's where the rear handbrake should be located. The men notice that the train has passed the terminal station, but it is still moving. They find an emergency exit. The only way out is to jump off on the go, but it's extremely dangerous, especially for women and children. Sarah notices a wheel-shaped handbrake. The men turn it and attempt to stop the train. Sparks fly from under the wheels of the train. It actually starts to slow down, but it's too early to rejoice. Soon the train regains speed. Apparently, the driver is pushing the gas with all his might. The train is going 100 miles per hour. The men panic and nearly start a fight as they can't agree on what to do. The room fills with smoke. The brake doesn't work anymore. The characters return to the compartment, back to Elaine and Max. The elderly woman informs them that there will soon be a railroad crossing in their path. If they hit some car, they could go off the tracks. Louis tries to comfort a frightened Max. The crossing appears ahead. The train doesn't slow down. Police cars pull up to the railroad tracks. Louis asks Max to sit down and bend over with his torso against his knees. Then comes the crash. The passengers on the train miraculously don't get seriously injured. Elaine feels unwell. She suffers a heart attack because of the accident. Louis tries to resuscitate her, but neither rescue breathing nor chest compressions have any effect. There are no heart pills in her purse, and unfortunately, the train isn't equipped with a defibrillator either. Therefore, they are unable to save the elderly woman. The stress she experienced was more than she could bear. Jan and Louis try to break into the driver's cabin. To do this, they use fire extinguishers. With great difficulty and incredible effort, the men manage to break the first door, but there is a second one behind it. Jan and Louis find the body of the conductor in the vestibule between them. Apparently, the mad train driver decided to get rid of him. They need to break the second door. The problem is that it's too securely reinforced and can't be opened with improvised means. Louis asks the driver to stop the train because there's a small child on board. Unfortunately, no one responds. Moreover, the driver keeps blowing the horn loudly to drive people away from his cabin. Louis is getting desperate. They need another plan. Peter says he's contacted the transit police. They'll try to stop the train. Oh, and one more thing. They found the driver. It's the injured man Louis saw on the tracks earlier. The man claimed he was attacked on the train. It appears that some madman got rid of both the driver and conductor, released the air from the brakes, and took the driver's seat. Jan suggests setting a fire near the driver's cab. Louis explains that this is where the diesel fuel tanks are located. If they explode, the train can catch fire and overturn. Then Jan comes up with another plan. They can try to uncouple the rail cars, but to do that, someone has to climb out of the train. Jan is willing to take the risk, but first, he needs a drink for courage. Actually, everyone needs a drink. People share stories about their lives. It turns out that Jan dreamed of becoming a magician and can do some funny tricks. Jan walks into the vestibule and opens one of the doors. It's very difficult to do something at such a breakneck speed and not to fall down. The guy tries to uncouple the carriages, but a narrow tunnel ahead prevents him from doing so. Louis saves Jan and pulls him into the train moments before the train enters this tunnel. The police set up a blockade of sandbags. Unfortunately, this method of stopping the train proves ineffective. The train stops only for a moment, but none of the passengers can open the doors because the train is in a narrow tunnel. Max is the only one who can get through because he is the smallest, but the boy is very afraid and refuses to do it. The train speeds up again. In 10 minutes, this railroad track will end, leading to a fatal accident. Louis makes an improvised explosive using the last fire extinguisher, fuel, newspapers, and clothes. A fire starts. People lie on the floor. An explosion goes off. This explosion destroys the floor panels and gives access to the coupling that connects the rail cars. Louis asks Sarah and Max to go to the back of the train, while he and Jan try to disengage the coupling. Peter stops the men and asks them to go to the rear carriages as well. He wants to disengage that coupling on his own. Peter and Louis succeed. The rail cars disengage. Peter falls through the gap between them and dies. Jan, Sarah, and Max are safe in the rear carriages, and Louis stays with the driver. The burning carriages separate right at the suburban station, and the policemen watch helplessly. Jan and Sarah use the rear handbrake to stop their carriages. Gradually, their speed decreases. Louis spots fuel leaking out of the train, which continues to burn. The man takes a running start and jumps out of the train at full speed to escape the explosion. The remains of the train screech and finally stop. The train's headlights go out forever. Sarah, Max, and Jan find Louis. He is unconscious from the impact, but the main thing is that he is alive. Louis comes to his senses and stares at the fire. Jan jokes that he was traveling without a ticket, which means he won't get compensation. A police helicopter circles above the remains of the burning train.